Coming up on Stakelbeck Tonight, we're on the shores of the Sea of Galilee at the very center of Jesus' ministry. Magdala was the birthplace of Mary Magdalene, one of the most devoted followers of the Son of God. And as our good friend Danny the Digger Herman will show us, this is also the site of one of the most significant and exciting archaeological discoveries in years.
CNN, BBC, international media was all over the site when this was discovered, and to this day it brings loads of visitors.
So get ready to walk with us where Jesus walked, only right here on Stakelbeck Tonight. Danny the Digger Herman, we are at one of my favorite places in the world. This is the shoreline of the beautiful Sea of Galilee. You see this lush vegetation around us. Hey, this was the center of Jesus' ministry, and the city we are in today in particular has a very important role. Tell us where we are and why it's so important.
Totally. We are on the shores of the site of Migdal, or Magdala in Aramaic, which means tower. And there is actually a stone tower behind you, Eric, which is resonating with the name of the place. There was apparently also a big tower here in ancient times. But the location is on a road junction in the northern part of Israel, right by the Sea of Galilee. This town made its living mostly from fishing and selling salted fish, as Josephus, when he calls this place, he goes by the Greek name tariche, which means salted fish. Okay, but the significance of this place from a Christian point of view, it's the home of Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene means Mary from Magdala, from Migdal.
Yeah, one of the most devoted followers of Jesus, of course, as the Gospels tell us. This, Danny, apparently is where Jesus and Mary Magdalene met.
Probably.
In her hometown.
Yes. The New Testament doesn't give us too many details about their acquaintance here. It only mentions Jesus casting demons out of her. But how did they meet in the first place? In my humble opinion, Jesus, after settling in Capernaum, which is behind me, he starts traveling around the Sea of Galilee, speaking in the synagogues. And when he came to the synagogue of Migdal, that's maybe where he spoke, and Mary Magdalene, sitting there, heard him for the first time, got so excited. She would follow him from this time on. She would follow him to Jerusalem. She would witness the crucifixion. And according to the Gospel of John, she would be the very person to care to come and visit the tomb and find it empty.
That's right.
It all starts from an acquaintance here at Migdal.
Yeah, she was there at the beginning of Jesus' ministry, Danny, and she was there at the end.
Yes. And the site here has been excavated since the 1970s, and in 2009, Eric, they make an amazing discovery. They find a first century synagogue.
One of the most important archaeological discoveries in recent memory, and that's not an understatement.
Yes, CNN, BBC, international media was all over the site when this was discovered, and to this day it brings loads of visitors, excited pilgrims, because of the possibility that Jesus spoke in that very synagogue. You have to understand, the whole site was terminated just 30 years later by the Romans. It didn't continue to exist in Byzantine times, in Muslim times. It was just covered by ruins until archaeologists started exposing the remains, and the tower area was exposed already in the 1970s, but in 2009, a Mexican team renewed the research here, and on the first season, out of the blue, where they were going to build a hotel, they find a first century synagogue.
Wow, and as you said, Danny, these are fairly recent discoveries.
Yes.
And groundbreaking.
Yes. Very, very interesting new material. We have a whole new understanding of the reality here in the time of Jesus. Capernaum reflects a poor fisherman village. Here in Migdal, we found evidence of the middle class or even upper middle class, mosaic floors, nice paved homes, an urban design, ritual baths that are still filled with water. Were designed for the Jews living here while working in salting fish and selling them, also to keep purifying it according to Jewish law.
We're going to take a look at all of those recently excavated sites, Danny. The highlight, obviously, is that incredible first century synagogue that Jesus very likely set foot in and taught in.
Yes. And not only is it a great discovery, it's also a great mystery, because in the middle of the synagogue they found an ornate stone with mysterious symbols. Eric, look at this. This is a doorway into a public building at the edge of Magdala, which proved to be the ancient synagogue. It's actually off limits for visitors, but we got the approval. Watch. Okay, I'm putting my leg maybe at the very spot where Jesus put his leg when he visited Magdala and entered the synagogue of the city.
Danny, it's hard to take it all in. Wow, where we are walking right now, let me just gather myself and take a look at this amazing archaeological discovery. Not only archaeology, this is spiritual, this is God Almighty. As you said, Jesus himself very, very likely walked where we are walking right now. As a follower of Jesus, what a thrill.
Yes, this is really amazing, mind-boggling.
And a privilege.
And at the first, you have here a courtyard with a place where people could sit. Maybe this was a study room for children.
Sure.
Okay, maybe they sat around this stone where Torah scrolls were read and taught to the young kids. The adults would assemble at the main hall over here, which is set as almost a square shape, rows of benches around the middle. Okay, some of the benches leaning against the walls, which are plastered and painted. This was a public ornate building, and in the
Pretty large as well.
yes, pretty large for the size of the town. And in the middle, a mysterious stone.
Now, this was one of the big discoveries inside the synagogue. Amazing. Tell us about this.
This is still a big mystery.
Yeah.
We still don't know for sure what all of these symbols represented. The only thing we can identify with clarity is the menorah. What are the other symbols, however? It's a big mystery.
Yeah.
This is called a Rosetta design. By the way, the whole stone is a replica, needless to say. The original is so precious, it's kept in a safe place. Not only do we not understand the decoration completely, but also the function. Why would an ornate stone like this be placed here in the middle of the synagogue? It has also these knobs, which kind of hint to the horns of the altar in the temple, maybe. Only one archaeologist so far has suggested a possible use of this, and that it was a base for a pedestal, meaning this is where they read the Torah, which
Makes
we
sense.
know is what they did some 2,000 years ago. Let's sit for a minute and think about this. Okay, you are seated now on the 2,000-year-old sitting arrangement of an ancient synagogue here in the Galilee. The Torah would be taken out of the ark and someone would be reading it here to the audience. The building, being a public building, was nicely built, very ornate. Not only was it plastered, but there's strong colors. Even on the columns here, Eric.
Yeah. Very well preserved.
Look
by
at
the
that
way.
strong red color.
Sure.
Lasting to this day. The floors, in some cases, were with mosaic.
Yeah, and also
Interesting
well
designs.
preserved. 2,000 years old, but
Okay, and it's really a rare find from that time frame. Magdala did not continue to exist after the first century, so this is 2,000 years old, guaranteed by carbon-14, by historical and archaeological information. How many synagogues do we have from that time frame? I took you to the one in Masada. We filmed also the one in Herodium. There are two more, only two more. Okay?
so this is one of roughly 5 synagogues from this time period, 1st century AD, 2,000 years ago, Danny, the time of Jesus.
Yes, and that's the most amazing part in this discovery of this synagogue, the possibility that this is the very place where maybe Mary Magdalene attended services. Okay, imagine yourself seated where she sat when a guy from a neighboring village by the name of Capernaum comes for a visit. He enters the synagogue, he reads from the Torah, he preaches, he presents his own belief that he is the one. He is the Messiah, fulfilling all the biblical prophecies expressed in the books of the prophets. And what she hears gets her so excited She will follow him from this time on.
And that man was named Yeshua, Jesus.
Jesus of Nazareth.
Danny, you mentioned that it was only around after the first century. Magdala was not around anymore. It ceased to exist as a thriving city on the shores of the Sea of Galilee.
Yes.
What happened?
That's also an interesting point. Unlike Capernaum, unlike Tiberias, unlike Nazareth, many other places that continued to be inhabited, even thrived in later periods, Magdala was knocked down by the Romans and never settled again. When archaeologists came here, there was actually debris covering everything, and that's why we had no clue that there's a synagogue here.
But there's some signs still of life here and the destruction, right?
Yes, besides in the synagogue, we have daily life evidence of shopping, getting fresh fish, and also Jews living and purifying themselves in purifying facilities that still get filled with water.
Can we take a look?
Yes, that's pretty amazing.
I'm reluctant to leave this amazing place, but Danny, some more good stuff coming here at Magdala.
Okay, Eric, I wanted to show you also this part of Migdal or Magdala, because here you have a reflection of the daily life of the city. And the people living here, unlike in Capernaum, were doing pretty well off. The guy over there had a mosaic floor. Wow. Okay, the floors are paved. Look over here. You can see an urban design to the city. People having nice big units.
Yeah, you can tell these are pretty big rooms, Danny.
This was a thriving city. There were not only fishermen, there were merchants of fish and other commodities. They had a very well arranged water system, but the water for the Jews was also used for a very specific purpose. And Magdala has actually one of the best examples of ritual baths.
Yes, the mikveh.
Yes, and this is one of the only places where one can still see water in a 2,000-year-old mikveh, a ritual bath.
This is rainwater.
This is January now, so we both have the rainfall and also subterranean water that fills it up.
Wow.
And if you go into this water, Eric, you'll be totally pure by all Jewish law.
Ritually purified, and perhaps maybe Mary Magdalene, perhaps Jesus even used one of these mikvehs here at Magdala.
This was on daily use some 2,000 years ago. And yet the synagogue area, the port, all ended traumatically in the year 68.
Clearly thriving, Danny, upper class, upper middle class, prosperous.
But when the rebellion breaks, the Romans come eventually to punish those rebelling Jews. And after Yodfat is devastated, the people in Sepphoris open the gates, and here they start debating, should we fight the Romans or not?
And this is around the year AD 67.
It's 67 to 68, and when the Romans arrive, the Jews have done their best to protect the city by a wall. We even found evidence of the synagogue, its components, its pillars, recycled and used to narrow the alleys inside the city.
In order to try to block
To
the
protect
Roman
the city
invaders. Yeah.
as much as possible.
Sure.
But Titus and his forces figured out a very simple trick. They went with their horses into the water and galloped around the walls and came from the back. So when the Jews realized this, they quickly ran into the shoreline, into their boats, and started rowing into the lake.
Into the Sea of Galilee.
Yes, but the Romans were determined to catch all rebels. They just made rafts and came after them and butchered them one after the other. You can imagine what the Sea of Galilee would have looked like at the end of this.
It was running red with blood, and this was a complete massacre, Danny, of the Jewish population of Magdala by the Romans.
Yes, but as a result of this, we actually don't have a clear destruction layer at this site. Okay, there was no battle here. We don't have arrowheads. We don't have this thick layers of ash as we find in Yodfat or in Jerusalem. But the site would never be settled again. Debris covered it up, and for 2,000 years no one lived here. The Jews deliberately did not return to this area in later generations, although Tiberias would be settled, Capernaum would continue to exist. Not here. Apparently this site became cursed in Jewish faith, in its collective memory, for all the blood and the impurity of death that it witnessed.
Amen.
But In the 19th century, the Jews start coming back, and right around the corner, there is a modern village by the name Migdal, which is Hebrew for Magdala. Tiberias is a thriving Jewish center. Okay, the Jews are back. So who won in that battle?
Father, tell us more about this beautiful place and tell us about the boat.
This boat is built of Lebanese cedar. That's going back a long way to the temple, first temple in Jerusalem built by Solomon. Well, Father Juan Solana, who started this project on his very first night here at the Sea of Galilee, had this beautiful experience of fishermen right outside his view pulling in their nets. And then he had the thought, wouldn't it be lovely if every pilgrim who comes could experience a boat experience? Because it's not always, it's kind of a bit of luck to hit a boat and the fishermen working, you know. So this is at the genesis of the whole thing. We had the boat outside, the boat altar out there at the shore. And then this became a central piece of the concept and the expectation. And here it's sitting on marble from Norway, merging with the infinity pool, so it looks like the boat's on the water, which is actually the scene in the gospel where Jesus is addressing the multitudes who are crowding in on him, and Peter takes him in his boat to pull out a little, and Peter must be very happy there in front of all the crowds, Jesus in his boat, but he's actually very broken heart, very deeply discouraged because he has failed fishing, and it's tough for a man to fail in his mission. And when Jesus finished preaching to the multitudes, he hits Peter right away on that spot. And he said, Peter, go out into the deep and cast your nets, right? So he's asking Peter to do something that his instinct is holding him back, or his experience, let's say, his hurting experience. So this is a great symbol, if you will, this iconic scene of the gospel passage, which pervades the whole building. We have Duc and Altum written outside the entrance, and then you come in and you see the scene. When the gospel is proclaimed here, it's like Jesus is teaching us again from the boat.
There was a boat similar to this one, Father, found not too long ago, a few decades ago. Now it's a Guinnessar, not that far from here.
So this boat is modeled on that boat of the Guinnessar that's at Guinnessar on display, and the ancient boat mosaic that we have from the Franciscan site. So there was a lot of study put into this. It's also a mast that's on the boat. And with the tabernacle, Jesus is asleep in the boat as well. You can see this. So it's a whole experience at the lakeside, and it just merges with the lake, and the sunrise in the morning and the evening colors on the Golan. It just all fits in so beautifully. Obviously, when people come to the Holy Land, they can be coming in different attitudes and different frames of mind, and also different interior battles going on spiritually. But somehow there's an openness. You know, when you put your toes in the Sea of Galilee, they get wet. So it's for real. It's not a myth. It's not something ephemeral. It's real, physical. And this opens up the human spirit to address, to confront the message of Jesus, the message of reconciliation, and also the reality of God's presence, Emmanuel, God with us.
And welcome back to Stakelbeck Tonight. We're wrapping up our special episode from Magdala, a very special place on the shores of the Sea of Galilee. Folks, Jesus very likely walked and taught in the synagogue that we visited. As you saw, the 2,000-year-old remains are still so well preserved. And remember, this was the birthplace of Mary Magdalene. She also very likely sat inside that synagogue listening to the Son of God teach and became one of his most devoted followers. She was also the first to see Jesus after his crucifixion. You can imagine how Mary felt as she witnessed the Son of God alive and resurrected. Her sorrow turned to joy, and she just had to come back to the disciples to declare, "I have seen the Lord." It was the spark of hope that spread like a flame for the disciples, And now that hope carries on today in you and me. Hey, great things are happening in Magdala. This site was laid waste for centuries. Now it's excavated and there are amazing archaeological discoveries every single day. And now followers of Jesus are back after 2,000 years to visit this ancient city, just as the people of Israel are back in the land God gave them never to be uprooted again. Stakelbeck Tonight, my all-new nightly series on current events through a bold biblical lens. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching, and God bless.